this week on the Navigating Personal Growth podcast. And today's topic is kind of out of left field, I'm not going to lie, but it's a concept I had never considered until I stumbled upon this book about the Swedish art of death cleaning. Hey Navigators, my name is Brooke Plack and I'm your host here today on the Navigating Personal Growth Show, and welcome to episode 139. I cannot believe we've made it this far. If you've been with us from the beginning or you're returning back to the show, welcome. If it's your first time here, you're in for a treat because we talk about real life in the real trenches of real things going on. And today's topic is kind of out of left field, I'm not going to lie, but it's a concept I had never considered until I stumbled upon this book about the Swedish art of death cleaning. Have you ever heard of death cleaning? I had never heard of death cleaning before, but it was like a whole new neuron connection just like came together in my brain, and I could not get it out of my brain until I finished this book. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What should you do with all that stuff, right? Especially as Americans, we have become a stuff generation. We can get it cheaper, faster through Amazon, through Shein, through Temu, and it tends to never be enough stuff. And so instead of having, perfectly curated items in our homes that we love because we have been able to save for them over time and really get things that we enjoy, we sometimes end up with so much stuff. And if you're like me and you have a parent that's died, you end up with their stuff. And it's truly one of the best gifts we can give someone and give the people we love is to take care of all of that while we are alive. So for example, I'll tell you, when my mom died in 2013, she lived in government housing, and my sister and I had to have her whole entire apartment, everything that she had, cleaned out in 3 days because the locks were being changed and it was the end of the month. And so we had to go through all of this stuff and decide what we thought was important to our mom and who we thought she would want to have it. And there are a few disagreements, nothing big, but for some families, that stuff, it is what leads to generational feuds and fractures in families where people never talk again, literally over some material stuff. So what can we do to be good stewards of all of the things that we own and all the things that we possess before we leave this earth so that we don't ever have that happen with our kids and our family, and there's no arguments and everyone knows. And you know what else? It's not so overwhelming because you have a giant amount of stuff. So in the book, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning, Margaret Magnusson, I hope I'm saying that right. And we will link her book in the show notes as well for those of you who are interested. It's a super great short listen on Audible as well. She talks about people like in their 60s, 70s, 80s doing this. I'm in my 40s and I'm here for it. I'm here for it right now. And so she really defines it though as an act of love, a practical, emotionally kind way to lighten the load for family while you're still alive. And when I switched the lens on how I looked at all of my stuff to that, I got home from listening to that audiobook and was like, I don't need 3 of this. I don't need 7 of that. I don't need all these things in my kitchen. If I were to die tomorrow, I don't want the people I love having to go through and spend all of their time trying to dig through my stuff. What if they could just spend time reminiscing about memories we had together and the good times and the impact I left on their lives instead of having to deal with all the stuff that I've accumulated over the years. So my approach to it is if I can start now, then I could lighten the load for my family one day. And so let's talk about the definition of Swedish death cleaning and how that is different from a minimalistic lifestyle, right? So Swedish death cleaning in Swedish is downsizing. I probably butchered that, but I gave it my best English shot, right? It's got a bunch of dots over the top of it, and I'm not really sure what those mean, but here we are. It's a mindful process of decluttering your home and belongings intentionally during your life so your family isn't left with a difficult job later. It's not morbid. It's very liberating and generous, and they see it as a way that you are stewarding life well. It's different from minimalism because it's about responsibly letting go, especially of legacy choices, and not about aesthetic trends. It's not just about let's just have less to say I have less because I can have less. Okay. One of the things that Margaret says is she says the best time to sort through your things is while you're alive and can decide what matters. And so we're going to talk about some specific ways that she recommends doing that and some ideas that I spurred from listening to her audiobook that can help us put this in action in our lives, no matter what age you are. If you're in your 20s, you're in your 80s, no matter where you find yourself on the spectrum. But one of the things that she said, I'm kind of paraphrased from the book, she said, the best time to sort through your things is while you're alive and can decide what matters. And so I'll repeat that last part again. That's why I'm saying it again. Can decide what matters. As we age, many of us know our mental faculties are not quite what they are when we're younger. So why would we decide when we're on our deathbed who we want to get our favorite ring or who we want to get our family's jukebox or who we want our summer home to go to? What if we decided those things now? And yeah, you can update it over time, right? But you can have so much ownership over that, and you're taking control of the situation instead of one day your kids having to minimize your whole entire household to put you in an assisted living or a bedroom at their house. And now all of a sudden they've made all these decisions for you, and like how overwhelming and scary and like not in control that feels. Whereas you could do it now and start thinking about those things now and really have the pen and hold the pen to your life. So I have a couple questions for you to consider before we go into our Trivia in the Trenches segment. So number one, if you suddenly couldn't speak for yourself, how easy would it be for someone to know what to keep, what to donate, and how to honor your wishes? Whew. I just think about my shop and all the Halloween decorations. Like, let's just start there. Oh my gosh. And how would it feel, or what would it feel like to make those decisions now? As a gift to those you love, but also, you know what? As a gift to yourself, because you are being very intentional about where you want your things to go. All right, so let's take a break and then we'll come back to our navigation points and talk about, let me go back to that quote I said from Margaret. The best time to sort through your things is while you're alive and can decide what matters. All right, here's our Trivia in the Trenches segment today. What are human fingernails made of? Keratin. And here's the fun fact. Even if you knew the answer, did you know this? The part of the fingernail that you actually see, that part's dead. The growing part is the part of the nail that's under the skin. Isn't that crazy? Like your fingernail is like the dead part of the nail and you don't see the good stuff underneath. Interesting, right? All right, so let's talk about how we can implement this in our lives. So you're like, Brooke, I'm 40, or Brooke, I'm 30, or Brooke, I'm 50, or I'm not ready to do that, or I don't want to talk about death. If you don't want to talk about death, that's like a whole nother podcast that like I don't have a diagnosis for today. The other thing I don't have a diagnosis for today is this, and Margaret says this in the book. There is a real condition, like mental medical condition called hoarding. And so like if you're a hoarder, like this is probably not the podcast for you because I don't have the skills to go into that. What Margaret recommends in the book is she's like, so I think you probably should like see someone about that and then get a big dumpster, because like, I think that's like a whole nother thing that can be addressed, but maybe just like not on this podcast. Okay. All right. So first thing is I want you to think about it this way. What if you were to reframe your attachment to these items as things that tell stories, but that don't keep people alive? Marie Kondo talked about in her book, your house is not a shrine to dead people. What? Like how many things do you have because that's your dead grandma's or it was I have an entire tote outside that's like stuff that was my mom's that I put in a tote when she died and I still haven't gone through it. And it's been almost 13 years or 12 years. Like, okay, like that's not going to keep her alive. Like I need to go through that and move on. Okay. So reframing your attachment to things that are telling stories, but not that's keeping someone alive. And so at that point, you have to acknowledge the emotions that sentimental items are anchors to an identity or a memory, but that, and like that letting them go can feel like you're losing part of yourself, but you're not. Like you don't lose the memory. You don't lose the story. But what if you were just going to keep a few meaningful heirlooms and realizing that the memories matter more than the objects? So like, what if you I just chose like 3 or 4 things of my mom's that truly captured her story and then just took pictures of the rest. So for me, I have a lot of her jewelry and like I feel and wear that every day. And that's enough. So I could probably let that tote go that I haven't opened 12 years ago, right? And if there's something I really want in there, like take a picture of it and then let it go. Because if I were to die tomorrow, nobody else even knows what tote that is. And they don't know any of the connections to those items. So like it really lost its meaning and value, right? Unless I like have some sort of story written down, which is also not a bad idea, something Margaret talks about, that can help tell the story to the next generation of those items. All right. So the first thing is reframing that attachment and thinking of it more about stories and not if you get rid of it, you're really letting them die, right? All right, number 2 is to go ahead and start practicing some gentle steps. So notice it's the gentle art of death cleaning. It doesn't have to be something that happens overnight. This is something that's going to happen over time. And so starting small, doing it regularly and only like 10 to 15 minutes at a time is probably the best approach because gently speaking, gentle is the best way to go. Because if you try to rip out the whole house and clean everything all at one time, that definitely doesn't work. And honestly, it just feels hard. It feels really hard. She also talks about it's most important to sort categories and not rooms. So instead of doing like the office, do like all pens in the house. Like how many pens do you actually need, right? Okay, you don't need to find every single pen in one room, find them all, or memorabilia, or financial paperwork, and getting all of that stuff together. Something Marie Kondo also talks about in her book is how we can really see the amount of those items that we have. And so then you're like, oh, okay. Now, this is a decision time. So this is where practice comes in. And I loved this part of her book. Okay. So this was something different that I had read in other like decluttering organization type books, right? So she says to sort them this way. The things I'm going to keep, the things I'm going to donate, the things I want to photograph and maybe recycle, who I want to pass them on to or shred. Okay, so when you're wanting to pass things on to someone, know that they may say no, and that's okay. But giving your loved ones, your friends, your family opportunities to take things that they could use and then donating the rest to an organization or charity that you care about. And not like waiting till it's too late to prioritize the paperwork part of this. Because if you don't have anything written down, like in a will, a trust of what's going to go to who, then no one knows. But making sure that you have those things written down, you have medical directives written down, your passwords, like this book, she's so sweet and kind and gentle in the way she describes it. Like it walks you through it and really empowers you and helps you feel like it's a tool that you can use rather than someone ripping things from you, because it's all about you having a say and you being in control, right? So number 1, reframe that attachment and realizing that letting something go is not letting the person go. And number 2, start practicing these gentle steps. Okay, what am I going to keep? What am I going to donate? Okay, do I need to photograph anything there? Maybe I can recycle it or pass it on to someone. Or maybe it's just paperwork that needs to be shredded, right? And then number 3, communicate with compassion. So you can involve your family in this, but set boundaries. If you know you're getting rid of a chest, get rid of the chest. Don't ask everybody who wants it if you don't think that anyone can use it. And let them know why you're doing this, that you're doing this as a way to leave a cleaner slate, right, for them. So they don't have this whole amount of grief, because having to sort and go through someone's entire house creates a whole new level of like stress and anxiety that you really don't want to pile onto your families. And then create a little story file. So short notes about the items that you are keeping and why you're keeping them. And that helps you preserve them without forcing them onto someone blindly. And then she also talks about like keeping one little box of like your favorite things or trinkets. So if there's like letters someone wrote to you or little things you've picked up on trips and stuff like that, put them in one box. And that's like your box that you get to have, just things that don't really matter to anyone else. You can even label the box like throw away when I die, like, because they wouldn't mean anything to anyone else, but it means something to you. And like, it's okay to have that. And then consider timing, because some conversations are best started early, and others may need to be more important. Like you call over all the important people to give away your jewelry all at one time, if that's something you're wanting to pass on. And so just to go over the 3 main things she talked about: reframing that attachment, starting with practicing gentle steps today, and communicating with compassion with your family and those that you're giving things to, and letting them know you're doing this because you care. And you don't want to leave them with all these things to deal with. And a few other things that she mentions that I really liked that she talked about was sustainable giving. And so making sure that you're donating responsibly. And so like maybe you could have a free yard sale in your front yard and for people to come get things that they could use. You could even specify like, this is not for people to resell. This is just things that you might be able to use, and you're helping someone maybe start their life. Maybe you have a bunch of kitchen stuff or tools that you don't need and won't use. And then also choosing thrift shops or, local nonprofits that share your mission, right? And so here's my quote I'm going to close us out with, and then I'll remind us of our assignment for the week, right? Is to steward well what you have been given. But the truest gift is a life lived with intention. When we become overwhelmed with stuff, we're not intentionally living out our purpose. And we often spend our free time trying to manage all the stuff, right? So your challenge this week is to start with 20 minutes of death cleaning, 20 minutes each week of mindful practices. And then it will eventually become so second nature. Every time you open a drawer and realize things that you no longer need or don't need to keep or store, you're able to start to let those things go at a more regular pace. And then you have a life that feels more intentional, more in control, and more that you are purposely keeping things around you that matter. And so don't forget to post about it and tag us with Navigate Well so we can share our stories of navigating our personal growth together. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Navigating Personal Growth podcast. I'm Brooke Plack. Join me again next week on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. This podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.